Hi, it's Monday, it's 3 o'clock. Welcome to Together Unlocked, our first show when we're not officially shielding. We know that some of you will be in Wales and still shielding, and many of us will be shielding in practice, if not in name. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But in the meantime, I'm Ju Gosling, artist and artistic director of Together 2012, who are bringing you this live stream today. With me in my East London studio is the artist and our chair, Julie Newman. We'll come back in a minute for some audio description, but first we will go to the other end of our virtual sofa up in the West Midlands for some introductions and audio description.
Okay, well, hi, good afternoon. Welcome to August. So I'm Robin Surgeonator. I'm a business director at Together 2012, also known as Angry Fish when I'm doing arty things. I'm up here in Sutton Coldfield. For those of you who have joined us in previous weeks, you will notice that my hair is considerably shorter than it was for our 50th episode on Friday. So we may talk slightly in a bit about having braved the outdoor world. So to that end, I now have much shorter, whiter hair. It's let the whiteness out. No rimmed, black armed glasses, deliberately stubbled on the face, and I am wearing a black t-shirt with it's a Cure t-shirt, and it says Reflections on the front, and it's kind of got half of Robert Smith's face.
I am Josh Surgeonator. I'm also one of the hosts of Together TV and a doctoral research student. I don't have the haircut, so it's still quite long. I've got kind of swept over blonde hair, no glasses, and then I'm wearing a maroon t-shirt or claret t-shirt with white lettering on it that says Sheffield Hallam University. That's where I'm doing my PhD.
Brilliant. And of course, we've spent the last 4 months, but let him get a false sense of security saying that really he looks ginger in this light. And even
I do at the moment.
now that Dad has had a haircut. I deliberately go ginger. I have hennaed red hair, short in a corona crop. It's halfway through a bit of maintenance, so I've got a grey hat on. Say no more, everybody who knows what I mean. I've got black plastic glasses, I've got black wrist braces, I've got silver jewellery. I've got a new t shirt bought in a sale online that was supposed to be pale yellow, is quite bright yellow, but is fluorescing.
I mean, to us, it's lime.
Yes, well, I'm sure you could see it from space, but not in real life. And that's the whole thing about the glories of the internet, isn't it? Anyway, it says on it in tiny little letters, future icon. I don't actually know if that's the name of the designer or just what they hope is going to happen, but you certainly stand out more than you were expecting to in this one. Julie, who are you and what are you wearing?
I'm Julie Newman. I'm the chair of Together 2012. I have silver and gold hair. I have dark rimmed glasses. I'm currently sporting a white t-shirt which says Choose Love, which might now become a familiar favourite for other people as well as myself. If we have it on the internet, they can see it in space, if they wanted to watch YouTube.
Well, that wasn't quite what I meant. I was meaning more that they could really lean out of the space station and see me coming. But that's a good place to start. On a Friday, for anybody who's just joined us, we do a feature called Something for the Weekend. We look at what's on TV, what's on the internet, what you can do at home without leaving your house. And I know you were very excited about the spacecraft landing. So what happened? I couldn't bear to watch.
It was really exciting. I've loved live television all weekend, and live internet stuffy. And I've been to space. I've been driving around Silverstone. I've been diving into the sea. The separation was the first thing that happened. The guys got into their little coney thing, and then they separated from the International Space Station, which was quite exciting in itself because the space station showed the the footage, and I just thought that was brilliant. It was so close, and yet it wasn't. It was amazing that it was, way, way, way high in the sky, and it just looked as if you could put out your hand and touch this rockety thing, and then it progressed. It took about 19 hours, maybe 20 hours for the guys to splash down. Looks like Josh watched it as well. It was exciting, Josh, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it was 19 hours from when it kind of disconnected to splashdown, which is an incredibly long amount of time. It shows you just kind of how high that they are. I remember, looking at it, I estimate it's going to be 7:48 UK time, and it landed at 7:48 UK time. It's just, obviously you've got to be exact when you're doing rocket science and space engineering, but yeah, on a 19-hour journey, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to land to the minute on the minute, and they did. It's just mind blowing.
Someone needs to tell Northwest Railways about that.
Yeah, I know.
And the airlines, I think.
Yeah, but I think I saw a tweet, I think from SpaceX or Elon Musk, that the Dragon capsule was going to go from New Zealand to Florida, like on its kind of final approach in about 37 minutes, which is so quick. It's a really long way, and it did it in like under 40 minutes, but it still took them 19 hours to get down. It's just sometimes the maths is mind blowing.
What gets me, and I know they've trained for it and all the rest of it, but they must have the biggest guts in the world. Because like, if someone said to me, look, here's a little thing, it's maybe 20 feet tall, and we're going to drop you from, how far up is it? I'm just going to let you, we're just going to let you go, and you're going to fall to the earth. Don't worry, you'll hit the sea. I mean, the thought of bungee jumping fills me with absolute dread.
So I think we'll move on there, Robin, before we have a miserable Mondays. This is August. This is our first episode when we're not officially shielding. But you were saying, Julie, you also enjoyed the Formula One.
Oh my word, yes. I thought it was lovely to have it free to view, because I would never pay to view it. And Channel 4, as Josh has said previously, have done a wonderful job in the highlights. And I thoroughly enjoyed the whole experience. Sort of like I had the space at night, the driving during the day. And it was thrilling, Josh, wasn't it? It was just stunning at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of midfield was exciting all the way through the race, but yeah, the leaders were kind of just out and gone. And then 3 laps to the end, the guy in second's tyre exploded. And then on the final lap, somebody else's tyre exploded. And then Lewis Hamilton, who was leading the race by about 30 seconds, his tyre exploded on the final lap, about 3/4 of a mile from the finish line.
I think it's further than that.
It might have been further.
It
was a long way home anyway. And yeah, you kind of watch the guy in second, and it was like just the time difference drop. And I think he was about 6 seconds in the end. But it made for quite an exciting finish.
Because we've talked a lot about the sort of drama and spectacle and the kind of links with the arts and sport. And at the moment, particularly now indoor performances have been paused for another 2 weeks, it's almost the only drama and spectacle we can get. But I was just thinking, I mean, artists are really competitive people as well. And if you want to get exhibitions or you want to get grants, you absolutely have to be. And we always say, for anybody who's joined us, the Surgeoners are the most competitive family in the world, or at least so they claim. And you've got a household full of Paralympians. But what would we do if we had competitions for artists? I can't imagine kind of watching us scratching our heads as we complete a grants for the arts project application form. It's going to be terribly exciting. I can't see, the kind of drama in watching somebody go through applications to be commissioned for our festival. I can assure you it involves a lot of coffee and a lot of head scratching, but it's not a spectacle at all. Where do we get that back in the
No,
arts?
I disagree. Actually, I'm sorry. I really disagree. As a documenter, I've documented your work for 20 years, actually over 20 years, and it's fascinating. The process of creation, the process of collaboration, the whole working it out is almost like a detective. It's very, very clever and very, very skilled, and it's fascinating. As I really, really want to push documentation. It's so important and critical.
I've watched a couple of kind of art competition shows. There's a program called Masters of Photography, which is a photograph competition, and they get kind of an assignment each week and get sent off somewhere, and they have kind of a guest judge who's a world-renowned photographer in whatever field they're doing that week, and then which is on Sky Arts, and then there was another program that was a Netflix one, which was a glass blowing competition. I think that was it works the same as cookery shows. There was 12 contestants or whatever.
I'll give you that, but with a but.
Okay.
Because I love, for example, the Great Pottery Throwdown, which is by the same people who do Bake Off. And I know potters who can't bear it and they just say, oh, but everything's so badly done. But I find it absolutely fascinating. But I never find these things very inclusive because they're time-based. And I can't think of an example from the Great Pottery Throwdown, but for example, in the Great Bake Off, there was a woman who, if she'd just had the extra 10 minutes that she would have had at school, would have done an awful lot better because, part of her hand was missing. And she had to do exactly the same time as everybody else. And I think as disabled people, it can take us longer. And I know Simone Aspis, who's a very, very well-known campaigner and now leads the Alliance for Inclusive Education, I believe. And Simone once said at a conference 15 years ago and was instantly misunderstood. She said, I would like to reclaim the title Slow Learners. She said, it doesn't mean we can't learn. And, we live in this society, she said, where everything has to be done to a time. This term, you will learn this. This week, you will learn this. Today, you will learn this. And if it's going to take you a little bit longer, forget it, because everybody else is going to be doing something else that you're also going to need a little bit longer to do. Home learning, blended learning, maybe that's one of the advantages, but that's what I don't like about those kind of shows, including the portrait painters and the landscape painters. It's really a competition about who can do it in 2 hours and who can guarantee to be well enough on the day. Whereas again, I think often as disabled people, we go, we'll work on film because then we can choose a day we feel really well to film it. And on a Monday, as part of our year-round creative development program for disabled people, we would usually on the second Monday of each month be running a free Just Turn Up Photographers and Filmmakers Club. So we're going to carry on chatting a bit more about film and photography later, and also picking up from last week about techniques of being able to create a video quite quickly with some images that, just still images and some music. Was there anything else? You said you'd been diving on coral reefs.
I have. I saw on the BBC News that there was this wonderful project in Florida near Miami, which is called Coral. Was it Coral?
We have a highlights and links page.
Yeah,
and the correct title will be up there.
Coral Camera. City Coral Camera. I beg your pardon. My goodness, my mind went completely blank, so I needed a bit longer to say that. But it's a 24-hour feed. It's an art science project. and it's showing this little piece of the bottom of the sea, 10 meters down off of the coast of Miami, at a little coral reef, and you're watching the fishes going past. And I was completely mesmerized by the whole thing. As I say, I was either up in space, driving like a little wild person around Silverstone, or diving off of the coast of Florida. I saw fishes that I had no idea what they were, so I've spent a little bit of time looking them up, but I actually think it's going to take me a long time to learn them. I got very excited because I found a sturgeon, and I thought of you guys. Which was perhaps a bit naughty, but it's just been mesmerizing. But the other thing I found is if I have it on in the background, I need to do some exercises for my lungs, and I'm very badly disciplined about the whole thing. But having it on in the background just helps me just to slow my breathing down and to think about it a bit more. So it's a very, very useful aid for me in quiet contemplative exercising.
And I think that's a really good tip. Lots of us who are shielding have got lung conditions. Breathing exercises are more important now than ever, but we're not getting a lot of breathing done outside of the house. So I think that's a really good idea. Robin, I'm so interested and jealous, of course, in the fact that you had a haircut. We were talking on Friday about, yeah, the situation is very different in different parts of the country, that we might have different ways of making decisions about whether we go out or not. I personally would like to see, it might not happen, but I'd like to see 2 weeks without a local case. That would make a big difference to me. A friend was telling me earlier this morning that she's been eating out, and of course, this week is Eat Out to Help Out. And her experiences had been totally different according to which restaurant she went to. From the absolutely superb, no chance of getting an infection, to the has coronavirus happened? Have I gone back 6 months and nothing had changed and none of the rules were being followed? How did you make sure that it was safe, and how did you find it?
It's a barber that I use regularly, anyway. So, and I phoned them this morning, in desperation after the hot weekend and spending most of last week on the poolside, and it just being too much hair. Um, and I said to them, do you need to book? And they said yes. And then I said, do I need to, should I bring my mask? And he said, you can bring it, but we also have masks you can wear, we can give you. So, I went, and it was, it was as very, everybody was washing their hands continuously anyway. All of the staff were wearing face masks. And whereas normally the barbers, they're kind of chat shops, with all the chairs lined up, or they actually put up partitions so that each seat had a partition that was at least a meter, maybe a bit more deep from the counter in front of you, so that you did stay absolutely within that area. So your only contact was with the person cutting your hair. And they did extra things. They got some kind of strange, I'd never had this before, like a disposable neck collar, and then round that, rather than certainly because it's a Turkish barbers, they always used to be very big on steam towels and stuff like that, whereas kind of all that's gone. There's no shaving and all that. That's kind of normal part of their sale. But they had disposable masks, gowns, that'll have to do, coverings to catch all the hair, whereas normally you go and you get something or other made of a material, a cloth, that they then wash and then hang back up. So it was all really just very clean. Even the till had a perspex thing in front of it. So and it was relevant, and it was quiet. Actually, it was very quiet. And I asked him, I said, it's quiet. He said, well, they sort of had a bit of a run when they opened 2 weeks ago. He said, but actually, with all the things going on, it seems to have slowed right down. And I can't say everyone I saw out, but a lot of the people I saw around Sutton were still wearing masks, even just walking between the shops rather than going into them.
I think it makes such a difference. I mean, regular viewers will know my front door, like so many people's front door, is less than 2 meters from the street. I think where I ventured out, and it was still a big thing for me, is I've got, I don't know, I've got a bay window at the front. It's a terraced cottage. And then there's a wall a few feet away. So there's perhaps between half a metre and a metre of concrete. And that had just got absolutely covered in things falling off the roof, things blowing in from the street. So my big thing was just literally to be able to open my gates and get a broom and clear up all the rubbish and pull out the weeds and chuck down some bleach and soapy water. In that time, not one person going past had a mask on. And most of them could see me. Most of them were about 6 inches away. They could see that I had a mask, a visor, gloves. They could see the wheelchair ramp, the disabled parking bay. And in Newham, it really, and I'm only saying this because of the disgusting racial comments that were made last week about particular communities spreading coronavirus. If I see a person of colour in Newham, they're wearing a mask and they're carrying a shopping bag, they're doing something. If I see a white English person, they're mostly not wearing a mask, but they're usually walking the dog or carrying some shopping. And if I see young white European workers, they're chatting on their phones, shouting at each other, and never a mask in sight. So the idea that the communities that have been hardest hit, and certainly in my experience, are absolutely doing their best, should be blamed, I think is outrageous. I don't blame the people walking past without masks because they've got very little information, none in their own language. All they know is that in their belief, it doesn't affect young white people. You know, they're being chucked out of the country because of Brexit. They're not part of any community. We don't even have a community centre, let alone it being open. But I was just so disgusted. This is not a time for us to be blaming each other. You know, whichever group we choose to blame. This is a time when we all have to work together. And of course, that involves wearing masks. And I'm so pleased to see it becoming more straightforward. The more places that they say you have to wear a mask, the easier it gets. But there isn't really any of this kind of acknowledgement that for many people going out of their flat to get to the lift, they cannot socially distance and they have to use the lift, etc., 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 particularly disabled people. So I've never been very happy about this one size fits all advice. And I think going forward, well, it depends what choice we have, because it actually hadn't occurred to me till I saw the weekend's papers that they might reintroduce shielding without it being part of anybody else's lockdown. And I think we might all have seen the stories about everybody over 50 being given an individual shielding. So you, like, somebody will assess how vulnerable you are and you will be told whether or not to shield. I don't think it makes sense. If infection's spreading, you need to stop it spreading. It is not enough just to protect people. We've tried that. We've been very, very good. Thank you, Boris, for 4 months. And it's not actually over. So I would like a better future than simply being locked up for the next indefinite period. But we have said right now, stay home, stay creative, and that is the best way to stay well. I'm delighted that our associate drama company, Act Up Newham, who've been making content for us on Zoom every single week since lockdown started. Again, most of them were in the shielding group. They're not any longer, but of course, they won't be rehearsing in real life anytime soon. So they will still be producing content for us on Zoom. And this, I thought about keeping till Wednesday when we celebrate all things poetry, because it is sort of a film poem, but I just thought it was so lovely. I want to show it now. So it's just going to take me a moment to get it up on the screen.
During this lockdown, I thought exactly good that not hear any of?
During the lockdown, I stand at the balcony more than usual.
The lockdown hasn't given us time. We are just like flowers. The lockdown hasn't given us limbs to grow into a much bigger person. I am flower energy.
I've changed myself. I'm an adult, a man. Everything is good with my family.
I changed my hair. I'm happy.
During this pandemic, it has taught me a lot. Life is too short, and we should not take things for granted. I'm like a flower that grows from the seeds.
Nothing can stop us from living our dream.
Well, I thought that was absolutely lovely, and I think summed up the last 4 months and the 50 episodes of Together Unlocked. I was really pleased that we looked back, and the sort of screen grab that YouTube puts on the recordings showed us smiling on every single one. And that's been our philosophy throughout. If you have a bit of a laugh, you stay creative, stay home, life's going to open up again. This is not forever. We can do it if it's going to be weeks, if it's going to be months, if it's going to be years. It's still not going to be the rest of our lives, or at least not unless for some people, of course, it is. And that's why we're doing our best to make sure that we make the most of this and we don't just sit down waiting for it to end. We would get very bored indeed. We're running a comprehensive join in from home program. We'll be adding some new activities shortly, but in the meantime, there's a very big range. In usual times, we have what we call our clubs program, now funded by the National Lottery Community Fund. And the clubs take place in East Ham every weekday morning. They're free to whichever disabled people want to come and can get there, and anybody they want to bring with them for support. So we have an art club, a poetry club, a dance club, a photographers and filmmakers club, a music club, and so on and so forth. And what I'm going to do next is put on a short video about some of the activities that we've got on our website in the Join In From Home program that we hope you will enjoy participating in. So just give me a minute because it's so hot in London, my fingers are sticking to the laptop. Together 2012 is running a Join In From Home programme from our website, together2012.org.uk. Click on the link at the top of the page, Join In From Home, to go straight to the main page where you have a wide range of accessible, inclusive creative activities, mostly using things that you would already have at home. At the top of the page and throughout the pages, you will also see videos in British Sign Language to translate the site for deaf people. These videos can also be useful if you have difficulties reading and you simply want to hear more of the content. The Join In From Home programme is based on the activities that we would usually be running in East London. Dance Club usually meets on the fourth Monday of each month, and they create improvised masked dance for the screen. Here you can also see their very first film, where they simply made masks from paper plates, covered themselves with fabric, and just moved gently to the music. You can hear as well, there's an improvised soundtrack. So we're suggesting that you make a mask out of anything you can think of. It could be a cardboard box, a paper bag, a paper plate is in here. Video yourself dancing in it and then share the video with us. We will show it on screen and we will also enter it into the dance programme of our film festival, which we run every December. If you're temporarily or permanently chair-based, there's also a warm-up you can do here created by our associate wheelchair dance company Folk in Motion, and that focuses on relaxing your upper body and improving your breathing. The Photographers and Filmmakers Club usually meets on the second Monday of each month. We're inviting you to make a video at home with the theme of home and share it with us. You can use a phone or a camera, make any kind of film you wish, including drama, documentary, dance, animation, artist films, comedy, and they'll be eligible for a CAT award at our December Film Festival. You can also watch with us from home. In addition to Together 2012 TV with Together Unlocked and other live streams, we have the Together Disability Film Festival highlights. Each year we run the International Together Disability Film Festival in Stratford, bringing together a wide range of films by disabled filmmakers, as well as films about disability issues and disabled people. We always publish the programmes online with links to the films that are freely available, so we invite you to revisit our recent film festivals from the comfort of your own home, and also to send us reviews of those films. And finally, you can sit back, relax and enjoy videos of past live performances, artist talks and creative workshops that we've produced in the past here. So, for example, from past festivals, we have documentation and films of creative dance workshops, street art performances, dances that the dance club have created, dance performances, and of course, we're continuing to add new activities on a regular basis. So that is the Join In From Home programme. I was thinking back and I hadn't done it deliberately, but we celebrated in June Newham Heritage Month, which was originally due to take place in May, and Newham Council were able very swiftly just to postpone it by 4 weeks and make it virtual. And as some viewers may remember, I made a half-hour film which was really just about inviting people in and showing them around the house to celebrate Newham Heritage Month. One of the reasons I did that is I think it's so important that our lives as disabled people are documented. You know, you talked a bit about the importance of documentation earlier. You know, historians will be looking back, and there's not many, shall we say, official records being kept of how disabled people are managing and just how we live. So have a think about if you're inspired to do something in terms of the film festival, but you don't really want to come up with some drama set in your house, you're doing that day to day, you don't want to do an animation, you don't want to do a kind of standard documentary, just have a look at the film. I'll put a link in on our highlights and links page, which is just under our main menu for Together Unlocked TV on our website, because it was just, yeah, I just invited in an imaginary guest, which was quite an easy thing to do after weeks and weeks and weeks without guests, and showed them around. But I do think that kind of documentation is just as important as anything else. What would you say, Julie?
Absolutely. It's a difficult call though sometimes, because how do you balance privacy with openness? I think it's quite an interesting discussion to have, and it's one that we ought to open up.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember now, this is, because I'm so old, much older than I look. Back in the late 90s, I was the first student to produce my thesis, my PhD thesis, as a website. And I did an accompanying website, which turned into my first piece of disability art, as it was then described. And it's a piece called My Not So Secret Life as a Cyborg. And it was talking about my life as a disabled person and why it wasn't really secret at all, because we're always having to open up to strangers to claim benefits, to get services, to access student services, all sorts of things. We have to disclose this very personal information. And more generally, I do say to people, this is not how everybody lives. We have, as you can imagine, quite strict policies for our clubs program. And one of the things we do is we ask people to focus on themselves as artists. Introduce yourself as being somebody who loves this film and hates that play and really likes this color and enjoys doing such and such. Not what problems you're having with your benefits, not what problems you're having with your health, not family information that you wouldn't usually share, because you're right, we're taught to overshare. And if you go to the average arts event, all anybody really wants from you is your ticket money. You don't have to go in exposing yourself. But of course, Josh's generation have grown up with Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, and people being encouraged to put it all out there without having any kind of barriers at all. And I think it has to be in the middle. There was plenty of things in the house that I could have talked about and deliberately chose not to. And I think that's one of the things. Back in the late 90s, I used to guest lecture to online media students, about just that. Where do you draw the line? How do you make sure that you've protected your boundaries? As a visual artist, I do quite a lot of self-portrait work. And part of that is from my 20th century background as a journalist. Because if you're going to write about other people's lives, you ought to be prepared to write about your own. And that was part of my thinking, that if you expose other people's, because I was a social affairs and housing and health journalist, you were writing about really personal stuff. So for me, I felt that as a practitioner, I should be open as well. And of course, the other thing that a lot of artists say is it's hard to get models and it can be quite exploitative. But you can use your own body and your own face as often as you like, and it's free and it's cheap and it's there. So again, it is about having those boundaries. What I do for self-portraits is I will put the image on my wall, and if I'm not comfortable with it, or I become comfortable, I wait till I'm comfortable, and then I put it out there, because I know that as soon as it goes into the public domain, I'm going to see it in different ways. People are going to make comments about it that are going to make me realize things about it that I didn't know before. So the baseline for me is make sure I'm comfortable with it before I release it. And then if I get uncomfortable all over again, at least it's building on a baseline. People have said all sorts of things about my work, and I've gone, no, it's not about, oh, yes, actually, when you think about it, it probably is. So, and is it like that writing songs, Robin? Do you hear your own songs and realise they're about something more than you thought?
As you were thinking, I started off listening, thinking, oh, I'm not even that interesting. Why would anybody want to see around my house? And I realised that isn't the point of the discussion, but I think that kind of just stepping it back a tiny bit, that some people would think, well, why would anyone want to see in my house? And yet people always do want to see in your house. Someone, you walk in someone's front door, roll in someone's front door, you're like, oh, what's in there? You just do it. So maybe actually we are much more interested. In terms of how much I bear myself, if you like, in songwriting, I think certainly psychologically and politically rather than physically, I definitely do. Morally, I do. Many years ago, I did appear in the then Dial magazine, wearing nothing but a guitar in an article called "Naked Lies." So, I have been known to expose even more. But
information for your son there.
Yeah, no, that you see that when those historians are looking, that's one they're going to be searching. I tell you.
But I've seen that Lady Godiva out there. It's fine.
Oh yeah, and Lady Godiva. There was that one. Me and another Dana did Lady Godiva through Coventry in nothing but woolen wigs. So there you go. So actually, there's me thinking I don't expose myself. It's a complete lie. But in essence of in terms of making that distinction between your medical life, your financial life, your perhaps even relationship life are very different from, as you were saying, what you like, what you feel, what makes you tick, what makes you smile, what makes you cry. And I think those are the things that actually interest people. You want to be interesting. I mean, there are enough people out there who want to kind of, find out what makes you, what might hurt you and what upsets you. We don't need that. Okay, we know what, but actually bringing through what is interesting about, well, what makes me tick? Why does that make me tick? What is it about Formula One that excites Julie and bores Ju? I mean, but those are the things. What are those? Those are the differences, and exposing that kind of differences in relationships and finding out why things work, I think, is interesting. And if you can put that across in art, I mean, I've been for weeks and weeks and weeks trying to think of how I could draw something that represents how I feel, with no drawing skills whatsoever. I'm working on it still, but I do think it is.
Sounds like a really good Friday opportunity, because we very much welcome guests on this show. If you're working away at the moment on any kind of art project, do come on and talk about it, whether you're an individual, a company, a group, funded or not, we don't care. We would also love to see all of your artwork, not just the things that you're doing as part of the Join In From Home program. We love to show your paintings, your photographs of your knitting and craft work, and so on and so forth. So do send them in. But I don't want to lose touch with this discussion. Last week on Monday, when we were talking about filmmaking, we talked quite a bit about just effectively putting a slideshow together and adding some music. We saw a little bit of one Julie did at Wimbledon, but thanks to the glories of Apple Mail, I think Apple Mail has now sent me 150 messages to say that Julie's edited Wimbledon film is waiting, but it won't actually send the film. But it did allow us to have a look at this slightly older one. Julie, if I put it on to solo, perhaps you could also talk to us about it. But it's just about finding very quick, easy ways to make films if you don't have a load of filmmaking equipment or indeed editing software, because that's often the worst. So a little bit of audio description, Julie. There's a series of still photographs of people in various outfits, including a hobby, which is a folk feature. Various colours, tatty tops, and dancing, and so it's Broadstairs Folk Festival. Yes, for sure. There's Morris dancers. And what you'll see is that the changes between the shots, it moves around, and that's called a Ken Burns effect. And that's deliberate. I deliberately put that on because it works to give it a little bit of movement. The subject matter itself is very, very active. And I didn't want it to just be frozen in a still photograph. I do tend to use a Ken Burns effect quite a lot. It's a default one for iMovie or iPhoto. I think you have to turn it off if you don't want it used on the slideshow. But it's efficient. It gives it, as I say, it gives it a bit of movement. What was interesting to me as well was that the crowds were there, and the people weren't just marching around doing their dancing and jumping around and being happy. They were interacting with the audience
And I think that's a very strong feature of the Broadstairs Folk Festival. And I really wanted to include that, which is why you'll see so many pictures of people sitting down. It's to get that interaction, the fact that people are participating. And I think as well, the ages, there's a range of age groups there, a range of competence in costumes as well. Some of the costumes I think are exceptional. And certainly when people have a uniform costume, the impact is quite impressive. Even as these guys in the background have yellow t-shirts, the yellow folk festival t-shirts, their little uniform, it actually works well. It identifies a group of people, and there's a message there to be had. And that's finishing with Broadstairs, lovely Broadstairs beach and the sea. Oh, we love the sea so much. But it's a nice way to finish it because it is very much about the area. With regards to the filmmaking itself, I simply used iMovie for this. I don't like iMovie generally, but it was easy to use. I put all the photographs together in a file, a virtual file, in the iCloud. I'd put them in the order that I wanted them to be seen because I find that much easier to do in advance. And also it's good to get my head into that way of thinking. So I'm thinking, in a way, I'm planning the little film itself and thinking, okay, what do I want to show? Well, it's Broadstairs Folk Festival, so I need a title, but it's also useful to have the banner that says Broadstairs Folk Festival. And again, sort of choosing the music. I went through a lot of music online, and I wanted to find something that was going to be free from copyright because I have no budget. I've got no money. So, I found this little bit of music and it was free to use. And I thought, this is fantastic. I think it's called Creative Commons, isn't it, Ju, when somebody shares something?
It can be. We use the Creative Commons license a lot. So, non-verbal Charlie and the Sea Monsters, which is our covered resources, we published as under a particular kind of Creative Commons copyright, which means you can reproduce it as much as you like, including selling it as long as you don't make a profit. But you have to acknowledge people, you can't change it. And you can't use it commercially. So Creative Commons is great because there's different ways. So musicians, for example, and people creating sound effects will often go, if you want to use this in a personal project, an educational project, a grant-funded project, that's fine. But if you want to use it commercially, this is how much it costs. It's quite a good compromise. And I know last week somebody who shall be nameless sent us in a video and we got a copyright strike from YouTube. And I had to take the sound off before our program was allowed to be shown in its recorded form. So these things are important. I know we're doing some research sparked by some viewers' queries as to where else you can get this music. You talked last week, I think, Josh, about YouTube having things available for YouTube creators. Is that right?
Yeah, there's something called the YouTube Creator Studio, I believe, or something to that effect. That has a library of sound effects and kind of incidentally typed, music, whatever you might need. It also then has an actual kind of free music library that you can use, kind of in your videos. If you are making a video that you want to put up onto YouTube, that you don't have the creator's permission for, then they have a library of music that you can use that is copyright free or royalty free or whatever, so that can just be used. You don't need any additional permission, apart from picking what you want and editing it in wherever you want it to.
Can I just say thank you, Josh, for that, because that's helpful. It can be quite a chore trying to track these things down. So, any tips are always very welcome. With regards to just producing something that I thought would be manageable, I looped the music to make it. I think it was 3 minutes 40 seconds max. It should have been slightly shorter, I think, but that I wouldn't want to go any longer than 4 minutes. And in order to do that, I speeded up some of the transitions, some of the speed at which you saw the still photographs. And as I say, I looped the music in a way which I thought wouldn't be too intrusive or too obvious, so that it lasted from the beginning to the end. And ideally, if I'd been using a different system, I would have faded it at the end.
And I think it's worth at this point just looking at what slideshows offer you as a filmmaker, which I suppose, kind of taking it in its most basic steps, is you can take a collection of still images which don't have to be your own. We've talked before about some film poems I've done where I've gone to photo sharing sites where, same thing, you can take these photos, people have cleared them for use, they've donated them if you like, put the film, decide the order, decide how long you're going to put each image up for. And what I'm hearing from you, Julie, is sometimes you might vary that. And some slideshows allow you to vary it between slides. And some people say, no, it's all got to be uniform. So that may depend on the thing that you're using. Then you've got the transitions, and what you were talking about with the Ken Burns effect is whereas instead of seeing the whole photograph at once, the camera appears to track across the image, and that's what putting that movement in. And then you've got the soundtrack. One of the things that we showed you just really briefly in the Join In film is how the dancers had made an improvised soundtrack where they had literally sat around a table and played percussion. And it's almost what our ears do, isn't it? We fit things to the music when we're watching, or fit things in our heads to the sound that may not actually have existed. These things can still work very well. So that's the other thing to remember. And of course, you might want to use that as a visual track for your poetry. So it could be that all of the important bit, if you like, is your poetry, but you don't really want to show yourself reading it on screen for whatever reason, could be all sorts of reasons, then a slideshow can be a great way of turning your poetry into a film poem as well. Have you done any recent things like this, Josh or Robin?
I haven't in the last few weeks. I've done some stuff with on some of her kind of schoolwork, before they broke up, on kind of iMovie and helping them with that. I was going to say, you can fade the sound in and out on iMovie, and just have to kind of go in. There's a separate menu for it, I believe. But yeah, I mean, iMovie in itself is really it does a lot of the work for you. I think is it 4 seconds. I think it puts it in as like for your picture, and then yeah, like Julie was saying, you can literally just drag and slide to make it longer or shorter.
I mean, and actually, I know from one of the videos that I put together for an Angry Fish song, it literally I put in the soundtrack first, and then the crop of pictures, whatever it was, 90 pictures, and it fitted it to fit the length of the soundtrack, which was, I didn't know it did that till it did it.
To be honest, I didn't know he did it until you said that.
And I mean,
it's important to just clarify that, yes, if you're lucky enough to have a Mac, I think iMovie comes with it. So do investigate. It doesn't cost you any more. If you're using basically a work computer, but you want to get something creative out of it, then PowerPoint or the Mac equivalent of Keynote allows you to do fantastic slideshows and gives you all sorts of options for animation as well. But there's loads of free, simple slideshow apps out there, both to run on tablets, phones, and computers. And sometimes, even if they're a bit more limited, they can be an awful lot easier to use if you're not used to using something like PowerPoint or iMovie in the first place. So I don't think it's necessary to learn how to use a program that allows you to do 10 times more.
Yeah, I keep seeing adverts for something which it's not free, but it's a very small price. and it's something like Scribblicious or something like that, for drawing cartoons, and it bolts it all together as well. I mean, the simplest stickman thing, if that's all you can draw. And I can't
Well,
scribble
let's try and
drawn.
get that for the links next week, because I think that sounds like a whole different thing. We have our very own Stickman Communications, Hannah Ensor, who's one of our artists, and she drew the Charlie. I know she hasn't done animation per se, so we're both very interested in that at the moment. So let's talk about that next week. Coming up on Wednesday, we have all of our usual items. The Together Pop Up Poetry Club is meeting by phone on Wednesday morning. If you're interested in joining that group, then contact us info@together2012.org.uk. We'll be reading some of the poems they're writing on Wednesday morning in the afternoon, along with other poetry. Some of our regular Wednesday items include the Clockwork Paralimpics. We have been
Yay.
supporting the virtual teddy bear hunt. And again, I think all sorts of children's activities are going to be closed for the rest of the year and to come. So,
Can we have a medal?
yes, if you've got a teddy bear, stick it in the window, or if you're doing a live stream, stick it on the stream for all the young people. Our teddy bears compete in the Clockwork Paralympics, where we race clockwork toys.
And won. We won.
Yes, and
We won last
for
week.
once, our teddy
We
bear
did.
has won. We
So did
also,
you win?
We won. Yeah, we won. It was
We-
good.
time. We also have virtual Naturewatch with Precious Newman, or this week it may even be Merlot Plurger, where we send our assistance dogs out to show us the outside world. Again, with local coronavirus rates rising, don't think we're going to be seeing much more of the outside world apart from that. And we have our sports and our gaming report with Josh Surgeonator, along with any poems you can send us, any artwork you want to send us, any news you want to tell us about, or indeed if you're burning to come on the show and read one of your own poems, we would love to see you. I'm going to put what's known as a crawler at the bottom of the screen again, and that will just give you our website address, our email address, and our motto, which I don't think is going to change for quite some time to come, sadly, which is stay home, stay creative, and stay well. There are lots of people who have to go out. They are key workers, they have to get shopping, they have to do all sorts of other things. If you can stay home, it makes it an awful lot easier for them to social distance. If you've got a garden, leave the parks and the beaches for the people who haven't. And again, then they will be able to socially distance. And then all of us can get back to post normal as quickly as possible. And in the meantime, have plenty of fun at home. Did you have anything that was coming up in the week or wanted to add?
I was going to say, what was the poetry theme for those that are at home for Wednesday? Julie?
Light and shade.
Light and shade.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a really
Thank
good
you, Josh.
point,
Yeah.
Josh. So each week, our poetry group have a theme that they write about in advance and on the day. And if you want to join in from home, the theme is light and shade. So that is pretty much it for our first program as officially. What is a non-shielder? Are we post shieldies? No, because our shielding could be recalled at any moment. If you've got any ideas, but previously to that, I think we've just talked about lockdowners, haven't we? Or unlockers.
I think we're now bathers.
Explain, please.
No. I know. We're basking in freedom now. Obviously, we're not shielding. Now we can bathe in the emancipation that it's now given us.
To stay home.
Yes, to stay home.
To stay home.
Yes, so on that happy note, from all of us in East London and the West Midlands, stay home, stay creative, stay well, and we'll see you on Wednesday at 3:00.
Yeah, bye guys.
Bye-bye. Keep drinking. Keep drinking.
Water.